Now let's move on to the setting up the failover for the SQL Azure. So as I mentioned that when you create the SQL Azure as a service, your Azure SQL data is copied to the three different locations, physical location within the same region, just to provide the high availability for your data. But if you want, you can go beyond that and ensures that you have the availability even in case of the disaster into the entire Azure region. So what do I mean by that is you can go and basically create the Azure application for your database. And we have also mentioned earlier that the SQL provides the built-in failure in the availability group implementation available built-in, which means that you don't need to invest time on configuring that. It's just few clicks you perform on the Azure portal, and the entire failover is going to be set up available for you. As you can see here, it is this particular diagram explains the scenario of the overall failover case. So let's say user connects to the application database from through the traffic manager, and then traffic manager divert the traffic to the primary location onto the load balancer. And once you have the application data, application connect to the primary database, which has the read write access on the primary location. And then the once you write the data onto the database on the primary location, basically it writes the data onto the secondary location in the asynchronous mode. And this particular data uh, which you have on the asynchronous mode, you can use for the read purpose. For example, let's say you have an application which performs huge volume of transactions onto the database, so you can use the primary location for writing your database onto the data on writing your data onto the database. And on the similar front, you have the reporting module which reads the data from the database and generates the report on your application front end. So obviously reports are something which requires the data to be read, so there is no logic behind using the right transaction just for the reporting purpose. So a good implementation for the SQL Server, what they can do is you can use the primary location for read and write the transaction, and you can use the secondary location just for the reporting purpose, wherein you just really are required to connect to the database and read the information just to display the reports. So this way you can utilize the both the primary and the secondary locations for read and write purpose. And the other way is like when a disaster will happen, for example, in that case the Azure Traffic Manager will make sure that it is connecting to the secondary location and making it as a possible primary for the time which the primary location is down due to the disaster. Let's move on to the demo and let's see how do we set up the failover in Azure. So I'm back on the Azure portal for the failover demonstration. I've selected my SQL Azure as a server. Here in the settings section, you have the failover group settings. You select that particular setting, add a new group, give it a name to your failover group, and here you need to select the secondary server. So if you did not had the secondary server created, you need to create one for that to check the failover, so that it is simulating a scenario for failing over from one server to the other server, right? So for my demonstration, I've already created a secondary server, so which I'm going to choose that one. And then here you provide, okay, you want to manual set up the manual failover or the automated failover, and then choose the database which you want to use for this particular failure. So I've already created that particular setup which is going on right now. I'll see that how much time it takes to. It is already running basically from last 2 minutes, and as you can see some of the information is already available here. And once I have the failover setup, as you can see, it will display where exactly my data is there. And you can see my primary location is the West Europe, and it's going to create from West Europe to the North Europe. It is basically transitioning the data from West Europe to the North Europe. Yeah, this is my primary location, which is on the West Europe blue color, which you can see, and it's basically migrating the data to the North Europe. Or if I want, I can replace the data to any other location. And this has different stages. For example, the data is at the moment it's in the seeding mode, so it's basically seeding the data from my primary to the secondary location. And once I have the primary location, or the data is replicated back to the secondary location, then using this particular read write listener endpoint, I should be able to connect to the database, and then uh, I should have the access to all my data which has been transitioned over there. And anytime I can go ahead and then add the additional databases. I can perform the manual failover, false force failover, and things like that directly from here, and I'll get full view directly from the here from here. For example, as you can see, the database status for my primary location, which is in the West Europe, it's online, and the secondary location, so that data is currently seeding it to the secondary location. So this way you can have the simulation, or you can set up the failover. This might take a while because the data is large in the size, so it might take a while to move the entire data. Now, next thing is about the backup. I know I'm covering the same thing like backup in as part of uh, the failure demonstration, but meanwhile the failure setup is running in the background. Let's discuss about the managing the backup. It seems like the failure is completed, so let's move back on. Now, if I go back to the server failure setup, let's see that. And you can see both my primary and the secondary databases are up and running, and it is readable. And I can always go ahead and select and switch to the secondary database. So my secondary will become primary, and primary will become secondary, and as soon as the primary is available, it is going to be basically a read-only mode, away available in the read-only mode. So it's not like I can migrate to the peered region, but if you want, you can migrate to any location because it's your application. So for this demonstrations, I don't want to paid over on transferring the data from one location to other locations. I have chosen the closest possible location, but if you want, you can choose any location for that matter. Now, here in the database section, I can go ahead and attach the database. Basically, I should have something called. Now, moving back to the databases, you can always check the geo replication from for your database. And while looking at the geo replication, from here I can always check what are my secondaries and primary location, and what are the available location which I can opt for moving the data um, to set up the failover simulation. Yeah. And again the intelligence performance counter is given here, which will give you what are these the statistics, which shows that how many queries are running slow, or if there are any indexes are missing, or if there is a deadlock or anything like that, anything SQL tuning or performance related things. It will show you here, which will help you as a DBA to you know fine tune your application database. And this is a really cool feature specifically for DBA or the database developers. Is the connection string which I can find here, and then I can use this connection string, store it on the key vault or in my application program, and then connect to the database using the .NET library. This is the .NET or edu.net space edu.net format connection string. But if you want, you can go ahead and check the other specified version which are supported in the different languages. Now this was about the SQL Server, but if I move back onto the uh, managing the backup of the SQL Server, so as I mentioned previously on my discussion panel at the initial discussion, you can always go and you know configure the detention period from 7 days to default is 7 days, but maximum you can go up to the 35. And here you can specify okay how many number of time within the week you want to have the backup to be created, or you want to have a monthly backup or yearly backup or something like that. And then any point of time you can go ahead and restore the database backup from one particular location to other particular location. Let me check if I'm missing something. We have already discussed the firewall and virtual networking. You can always, anytime, you can go ahead and create the network recommendation, fine tuning, and all. And if I go to the database, let me click on the database one more time. Yeah, you can connect to your database with the help of Power BI as a service. Uh, so Azure Power BI service right now is in preview, but hopefully soon you would have the Power BI as a service, which you would be able to create or connect to your Azure SQL database services directly from the Power BI as a service. Uh, right now, though, it's not uh, public preview, but still, if you have the Power BI configured on your on-premise, then you can connect to the SQL server, and that way you would be able to generate the beautiful reports, or representation of your data, which shows your business cases and all those things with the Power BI tool. You can also connect to the analysis service to all your databases within Azure SQL. Maybe the analysis service will look at it in some future videos. I hope this was useful. Thanks for watching it, and if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you very much.